Saw in the last video the basics of Tevilas Keylim, the types of utensils and the types of materials that require Tevila. So with that, we will see that there are a lot of basic appliances that we use and electronic items that we use to prepare our food that all say on them, do not immerse in water, don't get wet, only clean this part, don't clean that part. And the question is, the more that these become more and more delicate and sensitive to water, the more dangerous it becomes to tovel them. So what is a person supposed to do in those circumstances where you have a utensil that you really don't want to tovel because toveling it may destroy it? So there's really two options that you have in this case. One option is to have the utensil belong to a non-Jew and borrow it back long term. That's option number one. It's sort of like a loophole. However, it's a way that we are able to use these utensils. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to use them. So what we do is we hand the item physically. The person has to be physically there together with a non-Jew. You have to hand the item physically over to the non-Jewish person. I did this once, and you can see it happening. They're handing it over to the non-Jewish person with their understanding that it is theirs. It becomes theirs. I write their name on it. Right there afterwards, they see that it belongs to them. And then I ask them, can I borrow it back? Am I allowed to use this? Can I use it long term? But I make it very clear if they ever want it, or they want to leave, or they move, or whatever, they want to come and get it. It's theirs, and if they take it, I have to give it to them. It belongs to them, but we are using it long term. So that's what I do, generally speaking, with a kumkum, a hot water heater, or any type of basic utensil like that you're not supposed to put into the water. Option number two, if you don't have a non-Jewish person that you could sort of explain this to in a nice way and do this procedure with them, so then option number two is a little bit more risky, and I don't recommend doing it unless you are handy and capable with tools and know what to do. But what you could do is as follows. You take apart the utensil to the extent that it can't work the way that it is. Meaning, if it's anything that heats up food, let's say it's a sandwich maker or a George Foreman grill or an urn, as the case is that we did here at home. So I took off the bottom of the urn and I found the wires that connected to the heating element, and I disconnected those wires. So at that point, the urn is basically no longer an urn. It doesn't work anymore. It's broken. It can't do anything. If I plug it in, it won't work. It won't heat the water. It won't do what it is supposed to do. So now when I reconnect the wires the way they were just a minute before, so now it's as if I've made that utensil. In the olden days, this was done by like drilling a hole in the utensil and then filling it with lead or some other type of metal, and now it's made by a Jew. However, we don't have to do that. Now we can take it apart, usually technically, and then put it back together in that way. And then the utensil is considered to be made by a Jew. It's not enough just to open up a couple of screws here and there and say, oh, look, I can't use it because it doesn't stand up right. That's not integral to the Kli. It has to be that you are disconnecting something, making the utensil unusable as it is, and then putting it back together. So that's what we do. Those are the two options that we have. One, to give it to a non-Jew and then borrow it back long term. And that way you are not using a utensil bought by a Jew from a non-Jew. You're using a non-Jew's utensil. It does not require tevila. And number two, option two, is to take it apart carefully, because you might lose your warranty if you do this. Just be careful and only do this if you're confident that you could do it. You take it apart and move some parts apart from each other that make it that it won't work, and put it back together again. And either way, you are now able to use the utensil, either because it's considered to be in the ownership of a non-Jew, or because it's considered to have now been made by a Jew.